Hi, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of the Kalman Filter podcast. I'm here with Alex Becker, and we will soon introduce ourselves. This podcast is will be devoted only to survey and talk about Kalman Filter applications from its inception in 1960 until today. So as we progress through time, hopefully we will be surveying papers in a chronological order from the 60s until today. And let me introduce myself. My name is Nir Regev. I hold a PhD in electrical engineering. I used Kalman Filter extensively throughout my career in the industry. From 1998 until today, I haven't stopped using Kalman Filter for various applications from computer vision and target tracking in computer vision, whether it's monocular or stereo vision. I used Kalman Filter extensively there. I used Kalman Filter extensively to track radar targets from a person walking to wild boars to drones and helicopters and airplanes and ballistic missiles. And more recently, in the last, let's say, 5 to 7 years, I've been working a lot with Kalman Filter in the robotics as well as the automotive space. I've used Kalman Filter not only in tracking, but also in estimation problems, like estimating parameters of a parameters of a, let's say, a rotor of a drone has its velocity of rotation, speed of rotation. It has the number of propellers that we need to estimate. It has the mass that we need to estimate, and so on and so forth. I've used Kalman Filter also for this type of estimations. And today we're going to talk about the first paper that introduced the Kalman Filter, what we now call Kalman Filter. Obviously, the writer didn't call it like in this name, and that's about me. So I've been in the industry for 26 years. I'm also an adjunct professor at Cal Poly Pomona. I'm teaching control systems, and I'm teaching stochastic processes, all of very, very, very relevant for Kalman filtering. So that's it about me. Hi, Alex. Thank you for joining me. Alex. Just in
Hello, Neil.
Hi. Just in one word, Alex is a friend. He's also an electrical engineer, and he also the author of the book Kalman Filter from the Ground Up. I hope I got the name right, Alex. But
Right, yes.
I'll I'll hand it over to you so you can introduce yourself.
Uh, Hello, everybody. My name is Alex Becker. I'm a radar engineer, and I used extensively Kalman filter for purpose of target tracking, different types of targets. And as Nir said, I'm also author of Kalman filter from the ground up book. This is the book, yes. And this book uses practical examples to explain the concept of Kalman filtering. It explains both linear Kalman filter, the basic Kalman filter, and also other types of Kalman filters, like extended Kalman filters and unscented Kalman filters, and nonlinear filters. And anyone who wants to learn the topic, so this book is for him.
Yep, I will post a link to this book so you guys can purchase it if you want in the comments section. Uh, and I have a copy of this book, and I very much recommend this book to anyone who asks me about Kalman Filter. Let me, before we start actually surveying this paper, let me read some words that I prepared in advance about the author of this paper, Rudolf Kalman. So he passed away in 2016, so I titled this introduction as following: Remembering a Titan of Modern Engineering, Rudolf Kalman. So just a few words about Kalman. I want to talk about a name that, while perhaps not instantly recognizable to everyone who's watching, is the person behind one of the most remarkable technological advancements of our time. And I'm speaking about Rudolf Kalman, the brilliant Jewish, Hungarian, American electrical engineer and mathematician who gifted the world the Kalman filter. Kalman was born in Budapest, Hungary, in 1930, and his journey led him to the United States in 1943, midst World War II. I don't know enough detail about his personal life as a kid, but probably fleeing World War II Europe and the Holocaust. He pursued his passion for electrical engineering at the prestigious Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, earning both his bachelor's and master's degrees there. He then went on to complete his doctorate at Columbia University in 1957. Kalman's career was marked by a relentless pursuit of understanding and improving complex systems. He held research and academic positions at several institutions, including the Research Institute for Advanced Studies in Baltimore, Stanford University, as well as the University of Florida and ETH Zurich in Switzerland. It was during his time at RIAS in the late 50s and the early 60s that Kalman developed his groundbreaking work. In 1960, he published the first paper that would define his legacy, titled A New Approach to Linear Filtering and Prediction Problems. That's the paper we're going to talk about in this episode. This paper introduced the world to what we now know as the Kalman filter. Now, what exactly is the Kalman filter? In essence, it's a remarkable mathematical algorithm that takes noisy, uncertain data from a series of measurements over time and produces a statistically optimal estimate of the true state of the system. Initially, Kalman's ideas were met with some skepticism. The elegant mathematics were there, but the practical applications weren't immediately obvious to everyone. However, its power soon became undeniable. And one of the earliest and most critical adoptions of the Kalman filter was by NASA for the Apollo program, guiding a spacecraft to the moon and back with the limited computational power of the time was an immense challenge. The Kalman filter proved indispensable for accurately tracking the spacecraft's trajectory, a feat that was crucial for the success of those historic missions. From there, the applications exploded. The Global Position System, GPS, that so many of us rely on daily, is heavily utilizing Kalman filtering to provide accurate navigation and location data. It's in aircraft navigation, in submarine guidance, robotics, economic forecasting, weather prediction, signal processing, and even areas like medical imaging and finance. Essentially, anywhere you need to extract a clear signal from noisy data, the Kalman filter or its variants is likely at work. Rudolf Kalman's contributions were not limited to the filter named after him. He also made significant advancements in modern control theory, introducing fundamental concepts like controllability and observability, which are cornerstones of understanding and designing complex systems. His groundbreaking work earned him numerous accolades, including the prestigious IEEE Medal of Honor, the Kyoto Prize, the Charles Stark Draper Prize, and the National Medal of Science presented to him by the then President of the United States, Barack Obama, in 2009. Rudolf Kalman passed away in 2016, but his intellectual legacy continues to shape our world in profound ways. He was a visionary who provided a powerful tool for navigating and understanding uncertainty, a tool that continues to enable innovation and discovery across countless fields. So the next time your GPS guides you flawlessly or you marvel at the precision of space mission, take a moment to remember Rudolf Kalman, the engineer and mathematician whose brilliant mind helped make it all possible. All right, so that's a little bit of background about Rudolf Kalman, the one that actually derived and invented the Kalman filter. And here we go with the paper. The paper again is titled A New Approach to Linear Filtering and Prediction Problems. And let me read the abstract. The classical filtering and prediction problem is re-examined using the Bode-Shannon representation of random processes and the state transition method of analysis of dynamic systems. The new results are the formulation and method solution of the problem apply without modification to stationary and non-stationary statistics and to growing memory and infinite memory filters, and nonlinear difference or differential equation is derived for the covariance matrix of the optimal estimation error. From the solution of this equation, the coefficients of the difference or differential equations of the optimal filter are obtained without further calculations. The filtering problem is shown to be a dual of the noise-free regulator problem. The new method developed here is applied to well-known problems, confirming and extending earlier results. The discussion is largely self-contained and proceeds from first principles. Basic concepts of the theory of random processes are reviewed in the appendix. All right, so this is the abstract. Let's read a part of the introduction. An important class of theoretical and practical problems in communication and control is of statistical nature. Such problems are prediction of random signals, separation of random signals from random noise, and detection of signals from known signals, in the presence of random noise. In his pioneering work, Wiener, the inventor of the Wiener filter, showed that these problems lead to the so-called Wiener half integral equation, and he also gave a method that is called spectral factorization for the solution of this integral equation in practically important special case of stationary statistics and rational spectra. Now, Alex, in your studies, did you study about the Wiener filter?
I I don't remember if I studied it in university. It was long ago. But Wiener filter, it's also used today for estimation of stationary signals. As far as I know, it's used in computer vision. But personally, I don't use it. And it was the filter that was widely used, I think, before the Kalman filter came to our world.
Yeah.
And it is used for optimal estimation of stationary signals. That means signals with constant mean and variance. And the Kalman filter extended this to more generic signals and also non-stationary signals.
Right. And this is of immense value. What I mean by that is that sometimes we get measurements from the radar and they come in different SNRs, which means they come in different variants, for example. And obviously it's not stationary. And Kalman filter, elegant solution for that, is something that was a revolution back in the 1960, and is built on top of the math that Wiener built, but it's extending that, like you said, to non-stationary signals, which is very practical at least in our line of work, and apparently in other fields as well, like finance and tracking of securities values and of stock values and weather prediction and so on and so forth. So these signals, type of signals, are inherently not stationary. They don't have the same energy. Their energy changes, their power changes through time, and so Kalman filter was invaluable in this sense. And he continues here, and he continues that he also built on the work of Bodie and Shannon,
Right.
and Boudin and Darlington and Franklin and Lees and Huff and so on and so forth. And he's just citing all these giants in this paper. And he said that in all these works, the objective is to obtain the specification of a linear dynamic system, that is the Wiener filter, which accomplishes the prediction, separation, or detection of a random signal. And then he lists all of the limitations that seriously curtail their practical usefulness. 1. The optimal filter is specified by its impulse response. And it's not a simple task to synthesize the filter from such data. The numerical determination of the optimal impulse response is also quite involved and poorly suited to machine computation. And I think that the fact that you and I never used in practice, in real life system, the Wiener filter, is a testimony that this is actually true. And the important generalization, like growing memories or even infinite memories and non-stationary prediction, requires new derivations. And that's where Kalman
Yes, but by the way, the estimation of the noisy measurements
Mm-hmm.
started, I think, from Gauss and Galileo
Yep.
by developing the mean
Least
the
squares.
minimal mean least square method, yes,
Yeah, the least
and
squares.
it is used for more than 300 years,
Yeah,
even now.
yeah,
It was
yes.
before
The
Wiener, and
the
it's
minimum.
yes, and it's used
Yeah,
also
yeah,
after Wiener.
100%. Yes. That's true. So the least squares method, yeah, it was invented by Gauss when he was in his teens, so 15 or 16 years old, and then it was reinvented, I think, by Legendre as well, maybe 10 years after Gauss used it. He
Right.
didn't publish it yet, Gauss, and we still use it. With this type of estimator, we still use it very extensively. It's somehow related to the Kalman filter. I mean, it reminds us some sort of a least square solution. It's not quite, but some sort of. The Kalman filter is a more Bayesian type approach, and the least squares is more, I guess, non-Bayesian
Right.
type approach. And they're both very important. And yes, he knew all that, and he also built on the central limit theorem here, with the assumption of Gaussianity, right? At least for the linear case, and he justified that. It's actually very nice to read. I will read it out loud maybe, and here in the podcast episode, and yes, it's and also the not only stationary, but also the growing memory, infinite memory filter. The Kalman filter is iterative, so in essence,
Correct.
it just holds the current state in its memory, and that's something that was, I think, that was the thing that was most appealing to people who use it till today, even though we can afford currently these days we can afford to use even very large memory, we still prefer the Kalman filter because of its fundamental practicality of implementation.
Yes, and you don't need to recalculate everything from the beginning at each filter update.
Exactly right. Yep. So, and he goes on and say in this paper and introduces a new look at this whole assemblage of problems, sidestepping the difficulties just mentioned. The following are the highlights of this paper. Optimal estimate and orthogonal projection. That's one projections. That's one of the highlights of this paper. And when I was taught Kalman filter in my graduate studies, even though I used it a lot years before that already in the industry, when I was taught, like properly taught the Kalman filter in a graduate course, this is not the method the professor used. In fact, I never saw this method other than this paper, the derivation of the Kalman filter using orthogonal projections. And this is very interesting that he took this and he just used it throughout the paper. It's somewhat elegant, but also I think it's more difficult to follow mathematically. What do you
Exactly.
think?
Also in my book, I don't use this method. Exactly as you said, this method is very elegant, but it's very hard to grasp it.
Yes.
And I use more intuitive derivations for Kalman filter.
Yeah. 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 Maybe I don't know. Maybe we are doing some sort of anachronism, but maybe in the '60s this is the tools that they had back then. I'm not sure that the mean squared error, minimum mean squared error estimator, the Bayesian estimator, and specifically the iterative Bayesian estimator was not yet developed, I think, and maybe that's the only tool they had, and actually he goes, and we will get to that, I guess. He goes in the derivation. He's taking the steps that I learned as a graduate student for deriving the minimum mean squared error. He starts like that, and when you learn about the minimum mean squared error or the Bayesian estimator, there is also this orthogonality projection between the error and the measurements and the measurement space. He's calling it manifold here in this paper, and the smoothing theorem is applicable there. So it's very much like I learned it, but not in the Kalman filter sense, in the general minimum mean squared error estimation sense. Okay, so he's doing these optimal estimates and orthogonal projections. It's just he's proving optimality only for a Gaussian linear process, and models for random processes. He's extending the models for random processes to non-stationary, arbitrary random signals. Let's the rest. The next page it talks about the dual problem a little bit, and then the whole page is notation. It doesn't really matter a lot here. And I mean, if you're reading the paper verbatim, then yes, it matters a lot, but not for this podcast episode. And he's just optimal estimate. He's considering a problem of x sub 1 in this sum y of t equals x1 plus x2. x1 is a signal, x2 is a noise, like a random process, I guess. And he's talking about the differences between the smoothing, which is the interpolation problem, and the filtering and the prediction problem. But essentially, Kalman filter can be used for all of the above. All right, so he's going and developing some theorems about loss functions. So what kind of loss functions we should minimize in order to get our optimal estimator, and he takes the mean squared error loss function, obviously, and he's justifying why he does that. The paper here has a section dedicated to orthogonal projections, and that's how he derived the optimal estimate. Okay, and he's saying the following: the explicit calculation of the optimal estimate as a function of the observed variables is in general impossible. There is an important exception when the processes x1, x2 are Gaussian. On the other hand, if we attempt to get an optimal estimate under the restriction that the cost function is the quadratic of the error, and the additional requirement is that the estimate be linear function of the observed random variables, we get an estimate which is identical with the optimal estimate only in the Gaussian case, without the assumption of linearity or quadratic loss function. And that we know from theory of the MMSE, the minimum mean square error estimator, which is nice and linear in the Gaussian case. This shows that results obtained by linear estimation can be bettered by nonlinear estimation only when the random processes are non-Gaussian, and even then by considering at least third-order probability distribution functions. In the special cases just mentioned, the explicit solution for the estimation problem is most easily understood with the help of a geometric picture, and that is the subject of orthogonal projections. And then he goes and defines the vector space or the linear manifold of all of the random variables that are the measurements. Let's say we measure a range of a target with a radar, okay, and we measure it through time. We take all these measurements and we call it the vector space, linear manifold. And he goes on and on and on, and he's developing this or explaining what is exactly the orthogonal projection. And we know from MMSE that the orthogonal projection is a property of the minimum mean squared error. Right, Alex?
Right, correct.
Yeah.
Correct. What do you think, Nir? The Kalman filter, as I described here, it is limited to Gaussian distribution because Gaussian distribution remain Gaussian after linear transformation. But actually, it's also true for any symmetric distribution.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you have, for example, a uniform distribution, in my opinion, Kalman filter will also work well with this kind of distributions. What is your opinion?
I think that in other distributions, the loss function, or what he called here the loss function, will not be a if you take the probability density functions, it's probably not going to be in general. It's not going to be a quadratic, right? And
Okay,
he's basically solving a quadratic problem, which is
right,
a
right.
convex problem that promises you one global minimum, and that's it. I think that what it means that in general that wouldn't be the case.
hmm
Also, there is the aspect of nonlinearity, right? If you pass any random process through even if it's Gaussian, through a nonlinear process,
Yes, it
in
will not be
general,
linear anymore. Yeah.
yeah,
Uh,
exactly. In general, it's not gonna preserve Gaussianity. So then you're starting to be to take covariance matrices and mean vectors from different distributions. I think that this will a little bit complicate stuff.
uh, okay, but by the way, we are going also to cover the nonlinear filter,
Mm-hmm.
not in this video,
Yep.
but later.
Yep.
And we'll talk about this issue of non-linearity also, and
Mm-hmm.
also linearization.
Yep.
But it would be interesting to test a concept, or maybe develop other concept for
Yes.
symmetric distributions which are
Mm-hmm.
not Gaussian.
Agreed. Agreed. Yeah, it's very. I mean, I think there is a closed form Kalman filter for GMM type distributions, Gaussian mixture model.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, which is obviously non. It's not. It's not a simple Gaussian, and I think that it's derived in closed form, Also, the concept of interactive multiple model is basically that, and and but I'm not sure. I don't remember, but I'm not sure there is an optimality claim there. That's the part I want to emphasize. I don't think that Kalman filter, or at least not Kalman, Rudolf Kalman, when he wrote this paper, he didn't claim any optimal solution for other than the Gaussian linear problem,
Right. Right.
which by itself is very important and very applicable, right? But in practice, we don't necessarily use only the linear type representation, right? So, for example, in radar, we get measurements in a spherical coordinate system, and if we want to report or to track something in a Cartesian coordinate system, we have to go through a nonlinearity in the observations, and because it's nonlinear, there is sine and cosine terms there, and so on and so forth. But this is applicable for any other problems as well. Also, the assumption that everything is Gaussian is not necessarily true always. Sometimes it is, sometimes it doesn't. But the fact that we can work with at least approximately Gaussian, and the fact that we can, at least from my point of view, that we can work with measurements that are coming in different variances through time, even from time instant to time instant, it can scintillating targets are changing its variance constantly, or SNR. Kalman filter can eat these kind of measurements without salt, so to speak, and that's what I like about it. All right, let's go on with the paper.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So he is continuing with the orthogonal projection, and he's presenting some theorems, and then he's presenting some models for random processes or noise that is an input to a dynamic system or to a linear discrete dynamic system, even continuous system like here, down here, and he's quantifying that, and then he's solving these differential equations and converting everything to discrete time type state space model, and he calls the matrix phi the transition matrix, and y's are the measurements, x is the state vector that we want to estimate. And just as an example for a state vector in an image plane, it can be x and y of a target that we're tracking.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. And this transition matrix phi can be the model of constant velocity or constant acceleration or even constant location. And we can extend that to constant jerk and so on and so forth. And these are just, I guess, intuitive examples of what the matrix phi will look like. So this is the transition matrix. That's what he called the transition matrix. In control systems, it's called a little bit differently, but doesn't really matter. It's the same essence. And then he's going about and he's developing what's the transition rules for the covariance matrices and for the state vector, and how to predict and update the state vector, and so on and so forth. And here he has a full chapter about solving the Wiener problem.
Actually, it's the derivation of the Kalman filter. This chapter is the most important chapter of this paper.
Right. This is the derivation of the Kalman filter. He's solving the Wiener problem for non-stationary or general type arbitrary random Gaussian random process, and for the discrete model here. But he's mentioning that also the analog model or the continuous model can be solved in the same manner or similarly.
There is another paper, Kalman filter, or Bucci
Right,
filter,
right. Yeah, yeah. I think,
which
yeah,
provides a solution for continuous
yes,
systems.
yes. And this was published, I think, 1 year later.
Yes,
I
it was
think
published later.
1961.
Yes.
Yes, yes. We're going to cover this paper as well, at least briefly, so people will know about it and at least something of a survey. We're not going to go into, like here, we're not going to go into every line of mathematics, but people have to understand the uh, the chain of events that led to current state of adoption, wide adoption of the Kalman filter in our era.
Actually, I have never used in
Me
my
neither.
career
Me neither.
Kalman filter for continuous systems.
Yeah, me neither. Me neither. And since we started sampling signals, I don't think I don't think it's actually needed. But who knows? Maybe people use it, still use it. I don't know. I never used it in my career.
Yeah.
Let's say in the last 26 years, I never used it. But in a lot of the books we see behind me, there is a chapter devoted to the Kalman filter, and I don't know if it's very applicable. Probably it was very applicable in
In 60s, yes.
yeah, in the 60s when everything was, a lot of the stuff was analog, right? Uh, okay, so
Also, radars were analog.
yes, 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 absolutely, absolutely, yeah. So here he describes this dynamic system of the optimal filter, and and he derives the Kalman filter as we know it today. Again, using the projection theorem of the minimum mean squared error property, estimation property. All right, so let's scroll down. He's going and solving all of the Kalman filter currently known iterative solution. Is using only orthogonality for that. He's talking a little bit about the duality problem. Do you want to talk about it, Alex? I didn't
It's a more
read much into it.
theoretical problem. It's interesting if you learn control theory, but
Hmm.
it's less interesting for me.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah,
It's talking about systems without noise. So
yes,
systems without noise are theoretical systems.
yes, yes, yes. Okay, and then he goes through examples. It's nice examples. He's talking about applications. He's deriving the Kalman filter matrices and so on and so forth for different type of examples here, and that's it. And then we basically the paper ends. Before that, let's see. Let's go prior to that. I wanted to read something that I thought was nicely put. He's justifying. 1 second. Let me try to find it. Okay. All right. So number 5 here. It's a footnote number 5. He's calling, invoking this footnote up here. Let's see in what context. If you can see it, let me know, Alex.
Yeah, I see it. Footnote 5.
Where? There it is. There it is. Okay, so he's in the paper. Actually, in the body of the paper, he says it is fairly generally accepted fact that primary macroscopic sources of random phenomena are independent Gaussian processes, and he mentioned footnote number 5, in which he is writing, the probability distributions will be Gaussian because macroscopic random effects may be thought of as the superposition of very many microscopic random effects. under very general conditions, such aggregate effects tend to be Gaussian regardless of the statistical properties of the microscopic effects. The assumption of independence in this context is motivated by the fact that microscopic phenomena tend to take place in a much more rapidly than macroscoping phenomena. Thus, primary random sources would appear to be independent on a macroscopic timescale. So what he is saying here is what we know to be the central limit theorem.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. And I teach the central limit theorem and in school in the probability stochastic process statistics class in Cal Poly Pomona. I teach also that, and we know that a superposition or a sum of arbitrary random variables under some conditions, but it's very general, will generate a Gaussian random variable. And that's the theorem he's talking about here, without invoking the central limit theorem, but which by the way existed back then in 1960. I don't know if he was aware of the actual theorem or not, but it existed before 1960, and it's these days if someone uses it, he will just say using the central limit theorem and that's it. But he actually devoted a whole paragraphed footnote for that, which is kind of nice, and also using very nice. I never encountered the term macroscopic random effect and microscopic phenomena, but it's a nice analogy. So, Alex, before we end this, do you want to add anything about this paper?
I think that first of all, when you read this paper, you understand that Rudolf Kalman was a brilliant man, and those in 60s who read this paper and also were able to understand it, they were also brilliant. Because I must admit, when I first read this paper, I didn't understand it at all. And I came back to it only after I understood how Kalman Filter works from other resources. And then it became clear for me.
Yes, 100%. I read this paper at first, after my graduate studies, this specific paper. So I learned Kalman Filter from on-the-job training and books and online resources, many online resources. And to be honest, back then, like 20-something years ago, it was hard to wrap your head around it, how it works exactly, and all the intricacies of how to choose the matrices, how to update the matrices, why is it exactly like that, and so on and so forth. And obviously I read some derivations, which was not the derivation that he proposes here. And I just out of curiosity, after taking the course estimation theory in college, in graduate school, I read this paper, and it was clear to me. But was just because I knew that Kalman was an MMSE estimator, and I knew that MMSE have this orthogonal projection property, and I've actually learned it in graduate school, so it was easier for me to understand exactly what's going on in this paper. But if I were to read it before that, I probably wouldn't understand anything that he's writing here, which in 1960s is just, I don't know, it's just maybe between 30 to 40 years after modern statistical analysis and estimation theory started, right?
Mm-hmm.
It started back in the early 1920s, I think, by people like Fisher and Shannon and giants like those. So, like these. So there was not a lot of statistical foundation back then, even in the 60s. And this is very innovative, for sure.
Yes.
All right. So
Okay.
let's close this session. I'm going to post link for this paper and a link to your book, Alex, in the comment section. And for to the listeners, please tell us what you think. If you have papers of about Kalman filters that you wish us to review, let us know. And until next time, I see you all, and I wish you all a pleasant coming weekend. And that's it. Bye, Alex.
Thank you very much, Nir. Thank you. Goodbye.
Absolutely. Bye bye. Bye bye.